was a meat packing plant here along the riverbank, and one of the employees had walked out to the back on the riverbank to have a cigarette, and as he looked out over the river, he saw a body.
Of course, I didn't know that 2 days later, I was going to be called back to that riverbank just upstream for 2 more bodies.
Mr. Wade here and Mrs. Crime. We are now way out, approximately 3 hours out, to come to a grave of an individual of the Gary Ridgway. Now, who is he? He is what you know as the Green River Killer. This guy would take bodies and throw them into the Green River, and eventually the bodies would nestle up into the embankment, and they'll find bodies that way. Now, whom we here to see today, she was one of the second ones that he murdered. Now, his repertoire was always the ladies that were sex workers. That was his thing. And we're here to take homage and give respect to Debra Lynn. Mrs. Crime, she is over there. You see her back there looking for her grave right now. You know, once you find a grave, it pops out at you like, oh, there she is. But we're way out here in Tacoma, Washington, and we're here to pay visit to her grave. Now, I'm going to explain more of who Mr. Ridgway is and how he became who he is, a notorious killer along the I-5 freeway like Ted Bundy and everybody. So if you have already, subscribe to our channel. If you haven't, go ahead and click that like button and click to like it. We follow back as well. So I hope you guys enjoy this unfortunate story. Our trip out here, our Tombstone Whispers trip out here to see the grave of Debra Lynn. Stay tuned, a lot more coming.
Back to that riverbank just upstream for 2 more bodies.
Marcia Chapman was on her back, and she had large boulders on her thighs, on her shoulder, but one arm was free. And then I remember her one hand just kind of waving as the current passed over her body and the river moved on down.
We are now coming up to Mrs. Crime. She's looking for her grave. Mrs. Crime, how you doing?
I am good.
There you go, Mrs. Crime, y'all. She's back in effect. All right. We've been looking for quite some time for the grave of Miss Debra, and we can't seem to find it. Now, you know Mr. Wade is upset and Mrs. Crime because we came way out here to find the grave of Debra. And so who she is the second, unfortunately, the second murder of the Green River Killer. Now, what he did was he was known from a kid. He was born and raised by his mom and dad. Now, he used to pee in the bed. And his mom used to take a nice warm cloth and a towel and wash his area that he peed from and massage it, which was kind of weird for a parent to do, but she did that. This led to him being part of who he is. He ended up having an infatuation or a sexual attraction to his own mother. And as he grew up, he tried to kill a 14-year-old. And all this was coming out. Now, his dad was probably from the military, and he couldn't stand prostitutes. So that made this guy here can't stand prostitutes because of his dad. And he built a strong sexual thing that he had sex at all times. Now, he went to the military, went to the Navy, and he ended up getting married, of course. He came back from the Navy. His wife was cheating with someone else. He ended up leaving her. Eventually, he ends up getting married again. After they got divorced, he ended up getting married again to somebody else. And he had a son. Now, this guy here ended up doing what he did was he'll go to a town out here. It's called SeaTac. And that's where a lot of prostitutes roam the streets. He'll go out there and he'll get a prostitute. And he always take them to a wooded area. And his method of operation, his method of death is strangulation. And he will walk behind them and strangle them. And of course, he'll take them and he'll put them in the water and they'll float off dead. Now, throughout all this process, they said that they'll find at least about 2 to 3 bodies a week, or maybe 4 bodies a week from this guy. This guy ended up murdering approximately 40 plus women, even a young kid at one point. This guy here is very sick in the head. He's one of the notorious killers out here in the South, in the Northwest. He killed a lot of women. Strangulation was his method of operation. I'll post more on here on this video back further about him. I'll tell more about him, more strategic information about him. But we are still looking for her grave right now. It's at the Garden of Prayer. I was over here at the Garden of Prayer and the Garden of Veterans, and Mr. Wade could not find it. So Mrs. Crime is looking right now. So stay tuned for a lot more. We got more coming from Tombstone Whispers.
Ridgway would park and persuade the women to get out of his truck. Then he would attack.
Each victim was manually strangulated, and the fact that he admitted to the pleasure he sought out of watching the life seep out of each of the bodies.
So we're way out here at the cemetery in Lakeview. This area here, we have checked the Garden of Remembrance. You come back this way, we have really checked for her grave. The map of the actual headstone was off because she's not in this area over here. But stay tuned. Me and Mrs. Crime is looking. A lot more to come. Stay tuned. So we are now coming out of the actual office of the cemetery. Mrs. Crime, she had me go in there and actually find a exact location. Now the location they gave us is the exact same point where we were at before. So Mr. Wade do be in the right location. I just don't find the grave, right? But we're over there going there right now. Stay tuned.
Ridgway strangled many of his victims from behind. It gives him, first of all, the element of surprise. It reduces the likelihood they can effectively fight back against him. In those few seconds before his victims became unconscious, they would be shocked, they would be struggling to breathe, they would be in pain, they may be trying to fight back. In about 10 seconds, somebody will be unconscious and unable to respond to you.
Mrs. Crime is walking over there right now. She walks faster than Mr. Wade, so I'm way back here. Stay tuned. So we are now looking for her grave. Now they said that she was on the road that we actually looked, but we did not see it, so we were overlooking her. Now Mr. Wade has been known to do that. Wow. Crazy, right? Do all that looking, and then you find out it's exact location where you were at before. Stay tuned.
Well, then I'll let you go. I wasn't going to let her go. Just let her kill a woman. When I started killing her, just kept on killing her.
Well, unfortunately, me and Mrs. Crime could not find the grave. We've been looking. We went to the office twice, went back and forth, and could not find the actual grave of Miss Debra Lynn. Now, how they found her floating in the Green River. And that's how it was a guy that was actually over there near the place that actually found her floating. And that's how they found her body. She was the actual 4th one, not the 2nd one. And Mr. Wade is kind of let down now because I came way out here to create a story for you guys, and I could not find her grave. Mr. Wade did it again. I went and got help and still couldn't find the grave. So, wow. Makes you mad, but stay tuned. A lot more come from Tombstone Whispers.
This is a story that has haunted not just Western Washington, but the entire country for decades. The Green River Killer, one of the most prolific serial killers in history, and now...
I hope you guys enjoyed the unfortunate story of Miss Debra Lynn. Unfortunately, we're not able to find her grave. We drove so far to do it. Kind of let down on our part, but we actually tried to get help. And the person they gave us was not Debra Lynn. It was somebody else. A lot more coming from Tombstone Whispers from Tacoma, Washington. This is Mr. Wade and
Mrs. Crime.
a lot more coming your way. Stay tuned for a lot more.